My name is Barbara Boone, and I lead the Family Engagement team at the Center on Education and Training for Employment at Ohio State. We are Ohio's statewide family engagement center. Our team at Ohio State develops tools and resources for families to support the education of their children at all grade levels. We also provide training and technical assistance for school personnel. We conduct research, but more importantly, we bring research to action through the professional learning we offer, the resources we build, and the assistance we provide. We hope that after today, you'll join our ongoing network for leaders, that you'll participate in one of our seminars, you'll subscribe to our newsletter, and share our resources with parents and educators in your lives. Today is a day where we live out our mission to equip, to inspire, and to empower families, schools, and community partners to work together with students for their education and their well-being. It truly takes all of us at the table working together in our different roles for our children to reach their best and brightest futures. We are thrilled to share for the first time at this summit some of our newest resources developed by our team and our partners. And I think what I'm most excited about is our focus on youth voice and family school engagement. Today we have expert high school students, researchers, and school counselors who will help us see the importance of student voice and practical ways to support student voice in your schools. Now, before I go any further, I want to stop and recognize some people who work hard every day on your behalf. It's our team here at Ohio State. As you participate in the different sessions today, I hope you'll recognize the huge effort and commitment it takes to bring this summit to you and take the opportunity to express your gratitude to them. They will each have OSU after their name in Zoom, or they will be supporting your session as a moderator. We chose to title this summit, Setting the Table Together, Joy and Power in Partnerships, because it summarizes a lot of what we know and have experienced. Most likely, all of us here today are going to sit across from someone else at a table today. This common experience is a time when we talk and listen, we share a meal, we play games, we settle arguments, we pay the bills, we make plans. Sitting at the table has become a widely used illustration for how decisions are made. We all know that in order to play the game, have a say, and share in the meal, you have to be at the table. Today's learning sessions will provide all of us with practices we can put in place to welcome families and students to the tables where decisions are made for students and our school communities. We are inviting you to think differently and to be encouraged in your efforts to have meaningful interactions with families that lead to partnerships built on trust. When we build trust with our students and families, we transform our schools. Schools where every student wakes up inspired to go to school and teachers are inspired to go to work. There is power in trust to transform individuals and organizations. There's power in the trust between families and schools to improve the lives of students and to support their learning and their sense of belonging in school. Now, what about joy? Well, I'm a fan of podcasts, and one that I listen to often is called My Unsung Hero. Recently in a podcast, it featured Lynn. Lynn tells her story about when she was headed to the beach, something that gives her a lot of joy in her life, and along the way, she's struggling to navigate this path that she was on with everything that she was carrying. She wasn't able to make it. She was just about to turn back. She was feeling pretty vulnerable, not as strong as she wanted to be, and was really missing that. She was going to miss this joyful experience that she was looking forward to. And then she talks about a man came along, carried her load, gave her his arm for support to navigate that rough path. To Lynn, he was a hero and worthy of her story on a podcast because he helped her maintain this joy in her life. He helped her on the rough path to get there. Our students, parents, teachers, all face rough paths in pursuit of our joys. We all need in our lives, and we need help in maintaining that joy. We want our children to know the joy of learning, of creating, and friendships. We want them to know the joy of achieving their goals. Our team At Ohio State believes that when our schools work to build trust with students' families, when our schools see each interaction with families as an opportunity to encourage and support them, especially when the path gets rough, then our students, families, and our staff will all experience more joy. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Ana-Paula Correa, who is our director at the Center on Education and Training for Employment, and who is an avid supporter of family engagement and our team. Dr. Correa is also a professor of learning technologies in the Department of Educational Studies at The Ohio State University. She leads the Learning and Experience Design Research Group. She is dedicated to helping her students and all of us provide excellent online collaborative learning. Dr. Correa, welcome.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with almost 500 people. So the joy should be on my face and on my hand movements. So as Dr. Boone mentioned, my name is Ana-Paula Correia, and I am the director of the Center on Education and Training for Employment. We go by CETE, CETE, where the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center is housed. And we are located in Columbus, Ohio. So greetings from Columbus, Ohio to all of you. CETE is one of the research centers under Ohio State's College of Education and Human Ecology, and it happens to turn 60 years old this year. So I saw Dr. Boone with the 60 celebratory pin lapel. Mm-hmm. Lapel. So I misplaced mine. I will find it momentarily so I can wear it too. But we did create a short birthday video that you can take a peek at during the break. I'll drop it on the chat right after this address, so you can have additional joy in this day. As a translation research center, CETE is committed to bring research into practice. In the context of family engagement, this means applying what we learn from research to improving the lives of all students, their families, and educators, while working with individual families, educators, and local, state, national, and international partners. It's important to note that the Family Engagement Program has been a part of the last 10 years in our center's 60-year history. So congratulations on that to your team, Dr. Boone. I wanted to take this moment, and my address is going to be really short because I want you to enjoy the day with a fantastic lineup of speakers that Dr. Boone and team put together. But I want to take this moment to welcome all the leaders in family engagement. We are attending this Zoom event from all parts of the country and maybe of the world. So welcome to the summit that Dr. Boone and her team put together for you today. And I want to congratulate Dr. Boone and team for their work in family engagement, their commitment, and their work is guided by the people most impacted, the families and the students, in an effort to build an authentic, and let me stress, authentic partnerships between home and school. I'm sure you're going to have a productive and enjoyable summit full of joy and experiences, learning and networking, and exchange. We'll have opportunity to exchange valuable insights. So that's all from me. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day. Back to Dr. Boone.
Thank you, Dr. Correa, for that wonderful welcome. At Ohio State, we are grateful also to have an interim state superintendent of public instruction who recognizes the importance of family, school, and community engagement. Superintendent Woolard has nearly 2 decades of serving the state of Ohio, focusing on improving student achievement through the effective to inform decision-making, champions best practices, and collaborative strategies to advance opportunities for all students. Dr. Willett has 3 children of his own, so he understands firsthand the importance of the partnership between educators and his family for supporting his own children's education. So please join me in welcoming Interim Superintendent Woolard.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's a beautiful fall morning here in Central Ohio. I really enjoyed reading through the chat and seeing where everybody was from, not only across the state, but across the country. And for my international colleagues, I think I saw folks from Canada and Ireland. So this is just a really great representation and so many people here today. So I appreciate the invitations to say a few words to kick off the Family Engagement Leadership Summit. Also, a special shout out and thanks to Dr. Boone and her team at the Family Engagement Center. Dr. Boone's been a longtime colleague, and they do such great work, and we really appreciate the work that you all do on behalf of Ohio students. Family engagement in Ohio schools is a critical component to successful learning communities. We're extremely fortunate and grateful for all your work as well as for everybody who's on this meeting. The department is very proud to support the Ohio statewide Family Engagement Center as they receive ongoing support from the U.S. Department's statewide Family Engagement Center grant. In fact, Ohio is one of only 20 states with a statewide Family Engagement Center. And through this statewide center, we are committed to providing tools and frameworks to foster school and family relationships and encourage a strong two-way communication in support of our shared goal to ensure all students are prepared for success. And if you've ever heard me speak before, I talk a lot about data. Not unlike students across the country, Ohio's students were greatly impacted by the pandemic. And when you look at the data, it was our most vulnerable students that were most impacted by the pandemic. And it really helps set what the mission is. How do we help support our most vulnerable students? We have integrated the work of working with families into our future forward strategic priorities, which in Ohio, that's sort of how we branded a lot of our pandemic relief efforts. And those have really been targeted at improving literacy, accelerating learning, overcoming obstacles to learning, and preparing students for future success. This includes Read Ohio, our newest initiative, which is an exciting statewide effort designed to improve literacy skills for all ages and includes the implementation of instructional materials and methods aligned with the science of reading in Ohio schools. And families play a big part of that. Families obviously play a big part in supporting their students in their journey to become readers. We've developed an accompanying toolkit to help families and educators understand the importance of the science of reading and model family communications to support Read Ohio. That is available at our website. I'll share it in the chat. But if you Google the Ohio Department of Education website, it should be the very first thing that you see on that page. We're strengthening regional support for families with 48 Educational Service Center family and community engagement liaisons. And we are uplifting families as trusted allies to combat chronic absenteeism in Ohio. I know that there are several panels today, and you're going to hear from some evidence-based practices, and you're going to hear from attendance works. But chronic absence, much of the country, is a huge issue in Ohio. And we shared a lot of data last week, and we improved. The state improved from where we had been the previous year, but yet last year, statewide, over 26% of Ohio students were chronically absent. So over 1 in 4 Ohio students were chronically absent last year. And we know that students that are chronically absent are less likely to be proficient readers. They're more likely to drop out. They're less likely to be college and career ready when they leave their K-12 experience. And so we've got 1 in 4 Ohio students chronically absent. We know if we disaggregate that data, we know our most vulnerable students are more likely to be chronically absent. So really appreciate the work that this group is doing to support that work. I'll just note we also have a statewide task force that's been convening, and some of you that are on part of the summit today have been participating in that. And that task force will be wrapping up its work in the coming weeks and making some recommendations. So by connecting with strategic community partners, we can work together to identify root causes of absences along with opportunities to provide supports and interventions. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we did release the Ohio School Report Cards last week, and there's good news to be had. There is improvement happening over the past couple of years. We are seeing steady improvement, but we know we're not where we want to be. And in fact, while we're seeing improvement, we're not back to where we were before the pandemic. And in fact, if you've looked at our state report card, one of the charts that we show on there is our federally disaggregated subgroups. We're looking at all of our subgroups and how they're doing in math and English language arts. The good news is that all of our subgroups improved in both subjects statewide last year, and that is great news. Challenge is that when you look at pre-pandemic, not only do the gaps remain and persist, but in some cases the gaps are actually bigger than they were before the pandemic. And so we're sort of seeing this almost dichotomous recovery where the higher achieving students are doing pretty well, but our most vulnerable students are not recovering at the same rate. And it really helps set priorities and understand the work that we need to do with families to support students in continuing that recovery. So at the state level, these results that I'm talking about are critical to understanding the current state of learning in Ohio, and they're helping set priorities for policy supports and resources. We want to encourage our schools and districts to use that report card data to have discussions about performance and make well-informed decisions about instruction and improvement strategies. Have conversations with families. Look at what they're doing well. Celebrate the successes, build upon the successes, and continue to look for areas to improvement and how to address them. And families are key partners in that. This is important. This is important work. It cannot happen without strong family relationships. Strong relationships drive daily attendance, student engagement, and growth. Families are at the center of Ohio student success. I know it takes a lot of time and effort to create those relationships and engage in meaningful relationship building. I'm so encouraged to see all of you here today leading the way in growing in family and community partnerships in Ohio schools. You've got a great agenda ahead of you. There are so many great sessions. I am super excited about that student voice session. That is so important to get the insights from the students on these issues. So I hope you leave today feeling energized and empowered to continue your efforts to increase family and school partnerships with the ultimate goal of ensuring student success. So thank you for your time. Have a great day, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Judy.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Willard, for your leadership. Thank you for that encouragement. Thank you for the vision you're setting. We're really glad you took time to be with us this morning. Well, a number of years ago, I discovered the writing of Dr. Debbie Pushor, and I found her ideas about families in schools to be fresh, creative, and compelling. She honors families and the learning that grows within families, learning that is unique to each family. And she calls us all to recognize the deep knowledge that parents have of their children. Dr. Pushor is unapologetic about the importance of honoring home knowledge and building strong connections between home and the instruction in our schools. I think she's a kindred spirit, and she's also a scholar I look up to. Dr. Pushor is an internationally renowned educator, an academic, a researcher, and a thought leader in the field of parent engagement. She's a full professor in the Department of Curriculum Studies at the University of Saskatchewan and has been immersed in research on parent engagement for over 20 years. She has held positions as a teacher, as a consultant, a principal, a senior administrator, and a professor. She's received many awards for her teaching, her research, and for her graduate student mentorship. And I know why. This past March, I had the privilege to visit Saskatchewan and to see Dr. Pushor working with her graduate students and members of First Nations of Canada and parents and educators. She is a beloved leader who welcomes her students into her home and inspires educators and families. So thank you, Debbie, for being here and giving us your keynote today.
Wow, what beautiful words, Barbara. I'm absolutely touched. Thank you so much. It's just such a privilege, such a pleasure to be with all of you. As I was watching names, people saying hello, it was like, wow, you know, these are people I read, these are people I follow, these are people I admire, and I'm just really feeling like I am sitting at a wonderful table today with a lot of rich people, and I know there'll be a lot of learning for me during the day. So I'm just really honored to be here to share some thoughts with you. I've put my contact information in my slides so that if there are things you want to follow up with me on, you're able to do that. And I'm really excited about office hour next week, where we'll get to interact and talk more specifically. It's very important for us on the land on which we live. I'm in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 territory. We've signed treaties with our First Nations people. You are on many lands all over the world, all over the United States. And so I want you to have a moment to honor the land on which you live, you work, you play as well. This is a beautiful land acknowledgement developed by a group of kindergarten children. Haley is one of the grad students I've had the privilege of working with. And I thought, you know, when we think about setting the table together, how beautifully this honors children at that table as well.
We, the kindergarten community, would like to acknowledge that we eat, work, run, play, clean up, and sweep today, and every day in Treaty 6 territory and homework of the Métis. We give thanks to the land for the grass and the beauty that makes us happy. We give thanks to the water for keeping us clean, healthy, hydrated, and alive. We give thanks to the animals. They give us food, clothes, and blankets. Some give us love, happiness, and fun. We give thanks to the plants. They give us safe food and medicine, and they help the bees. We appreciate and give thanks to the First Nations and Métis ancestors on Treaty 6 for sharing the land with us. We will take care of the land by not wasting food or water, cleaning up, not breaking benches or flowers, and not littering.
Thank you so much for that. When Dr. Boone, when Barbara and her team talked to me about the theme for this summit this year and the idea of setting the table, joy and power in partnerships, the thing that first came to mind for me was this beautiful book written by Bird Baylor, illustrated by Peter Parnell, The Table Where Rich People Sit. It's been a long time favorite of mine, of my children. I use it in my classes with students. It just really speaks, I think, to what we're thinking about today. So I want to begin by just reading you a little bit at the front of the book. I'll tell you about it, and I think that you will easily see the connections as well. If you could see us sitting here at our old scratched up homemade kitchen table, you'd know that we're not rich. But my Father's trying to tell us we are. Doesn't he notice my worn out shoes? Or that my little brother has patches on the pants he wears to first grade? And why does he think that old rattletrap truck is parked in front of our door? You can't fool me, I say. We're poor. Would rich people sit at a table like this? My mother sort of pats the table and she says, well, we are rich and we sit here every day. Sometimes I think I'm the only one in my whole family who's really sensible. Maybe I should explain that my parents made this table out of lumber somebody else threw away. They even had a celebration when they finished it. Understand, I like this table just fine. All I'm saying is you can tell it didn't come from a furniture store. It just doesn't look like a table where rich people would sit. But my mother thinks if all the rulers of the world could get together at a friendly wooden table in somebody's kitchen, they would solve their arguments in half the time. And my father says it wouldn't hurt to have a lot of cookies piled up on a nice blue plate that everyone could reach without asking. So, as Barbara said, right, we set the table together. Tables are central to our lives. They're where we gather as families, where we gather at work. And so how do we ensure that when we set that table, everyone is invited, and that when they come to that table, there are cookies for them, there is a warmth, a hospitality, a welcome? And how do we ensure that their richnesses, all the knowledge they hold, all the experiences they have, come to that table too? How do we ensure that everyone has place, but also has voice, is seen to be expert, is seen to be knowing? Those are the things that I want to talk with you about today. In the story, the little girl wants to make a list, and she wants to say, how much money do we have as a family? And so she wants to start by writing down how much money is in their bank account. And the mom and dad said, no, honey, that isn't how we count our richness. And so they go through a process of saying, we're rich because we're able to walk outside in the canyons. We're rich because we are able to hear coyotes howl. We're rich because we can watch the sunset or the sunrise the next day, and they go on and on. And as they began to make the list, all of the richnesses are about themselves, about what they know, about what they do, about where they get to travel. And it really teaches the little girl that the money in the bank account isn't where the richness is. So I want to look at that family just as one example. I believe that education and schooling are related, but not the same thing. Education is all of those things that happen from the moment a baby's born and enters a family to forever. And so that education starts immediately as we take our children places. We sing to them, we read to them, we play with them, we take them to church, to cultural activities. All of those kinds of things we begin. That's education. And as I said, it's a birth to forever process. So for me, when I think about this work, parents have the big job. They have the amazingly lifelong job that's going to make such a difference to their children. When we look at schooling then, schooling is just one part of a child's education, an important part. Obviously, it's the formal part. We have teachers with expertise. We introduce curriculum, learning strategies, all kinds of things. I'm not downplaying that. But when we calculate here in Saskatchewan how much time children spend in school, when we look at teachers' contact hours, it's only 17%. And I know when you look at the literature, it often talks about kids are out of school 80%, in school 20%. So all of those things that Dr. Woolard was talking about, we cannot do them in our 17 or our 20%. We need to maximize and capitalize the whole 100%. So the role that parents play is really, really critical. As I said, they carry the big job. Unfortunately, what has happened, I think, as schools have become formalized and established, educators move into a community, they claim that ground called school, a big building is built. This is a school in Saskatoon. And the educators establish the policies, the practices, the entry and exit times, how discipline is going to be handled. All of that's kind of decided. And then it's told to parents, it's told to children, this is how it's going to be. In some of my earlier writing, I called that schools as protectorates. We build these big walls, we claim the ground, and then we are the experts who reside within it. We welcome kids. We're not as good often as welcoming their parents. So what happens, parents are able to come to the school when we ask them to, for a conference, for a meeting, for an open house. We say, visitors, please report to the office. My question is, are parents visitors in their children's education? How do we think about some of those things? So I call that being school-centric. We've claimed the ground, we've set the agenda, and now it's all about us. It's all about the curriculum, what we want, what we need, and we ask parents to help us achieve that, right? We say, we need your help in order to do these things. Please read to your children at home. Please do these homework pages. Please come to this meeting at this time. Please pick up at this time. Make sure your child has lunch. We're asking them to serve the things that we need and want. And we need and want them because they're good for kids, but we forget there's another 80%. For me, one of the problems with schools when we run them as protectorates, we create this school-centric kind of attitude or approach, is that we involve our parents. And when I use the word parent, I want to be sure that everyone knows I mean it really inclusively. To parent is an act, it's an action. And we know that many people parent. Grandmothers, grandfathers, aunties, uncles, older siblings. We know kids are in care homes. We know there's all kinds of people in the life of a child. So I want to reclaim that word parent. And I want that word to be big and inclusive of everyone who parents, who acts in the role of a parent. So the problem then with this school-centric agenda is we involve our parents, right? The hierarchy's in place still. We've made the rules, we've made the decisions, and we say, parents, help us achieve it. That's involvement. All we're asking is that they do what we need them to do when we ask them to. There's a hierarchy, and we're the deciders. We still are positioned as educators in that scenario as the knowers, as the ones who know. So we can see how you can't set the table and have everyone have a seat at the table in a hierarchical structure such as this one. So how do we change that? I use this term about walking alongside. To me, when I think about our work in schools, as we welcome families, as we invite them to come in, as we ask them what they know about their kids, what their hopes and dreams are, it's a process of walking alongside. In that work, we are walking alongside, we're setting the table to sit alongside, we're setting the table to talk alongside, to think alongside, always that alongside piece. How do we come, not in a hierarchical way, but side by side, both seen to be knowing of teaching, of children, of learning, each having expertise, knowledge, that when we bring it together, we can do so much more with our children than we can alone. So what does that mean to walk alongside? It means, I've used the work of Green and Christian, it means to attend, to listen both with our heads and our hearts, right? And it means to demonstrate, I am with you. In an article I read of theirs, they wrote about a Chinese symbol, a Chinese character having 5 symbols that make up that character: eye, ear, heart, the concept of you, and then the concept of undivided attention. So when you're walking alongside, you're saying to parents, to family members, I am with you. I know you have hopes and dreams for your child. I am with you in helping you to realize, to actualize those hopes and dreams. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm with you in doing it. And so for me, when I think about that, then walking alongside for me is both a philosophy and a pedagogy, right? So it's a philosophy, it's a belief system, it's a belief in the knowledge parents hold and the expertise they have. And it's a pedagogy, it's a way to bring those beliefs to life. How do we, right, walk alongside parents in their lifelong work to educate their child, in their lifelong work to realize their hopes and dreams, their children's hopes and dreams for themselves? So when we're walking alongside families, we move from a school-centric approach to a family-centric approach. Families are now at the center, and I heard Dr. Woolard say that this morning as well. So in family-centric approaches, we are welcoming. There are places for them. We are asking them to tell us about their children, about their family, about their hopes and dreams. We are giving them place. We are giving them voice. We're making sure that there's room for them. So in this kind of approach then, rather than involving our parents, we're now engaging them. And there's quite a conceptual, quite a difference to me in those two concepts in those two ways of being. So when I look up the meaning of the word engage, the end part is to make. Engage a pledge, to make a pledge. So when we're engaging parents, we're making a moral commitment to them. We're meshing together. Think of two cogs in a wheel, one feeding into the other, one needing those cogs to turn the other. They're actually touching, engaging, interacting. That's, to me, family engagement. I heard the words authentic emphasized this morning, the word authentic, and that's so important. To me, family engagement is when we meaningfully and authentically give place and voice to our parents, sitting alongside, talking alongside, walking alongside. The hierarchy's been flattened. And it doesn't mean that we don't continue to honor teacher expertise, teacher knowledge. We're not downplaying it. We're not turning the hierarchy upside down. We're just standing more equally, more equitably, both as knowers, as I said earlier, of teaching, of children, and of learning. So one of the things that I think is so critical, so key, there's so much we gain from walking alongside our families. We gain access to their funds of knowledge. And I know so many of you will be well versed in this work. I think it's just such seminal and foundational work in our field. We also gain access to home culture. And this was a concept that was introduced to me by Yesenia Ramirez from the Parent Teacher Home Visit Program. And it just was like a light bulb moment for me. I've had lots of teachers say, well, why would I do home visits? You know, their families really aren't that different than mine in this community. Or, you know, I grew up here. I have a pretty good sense of who they are. And so home culture for me was something that was really important to be thinking about. And the last thing, Barbara mentioned the work that I've done in parent knowledge. And, you know, I had an experience back when I was a doctoral student. I was working with Dr. Jean Clendon at the University of Alberta. And she said, Debbie, you keep talking about parent knowledge. What is parent knowledge? And, you know, I started looking. I did lots of searches, and there wasn't very much out there. There was stuff on parenting. There was stuff on advocacy. But at this term, parent knowledge wasn't there. When you search teacher knowledge, you're going to get thousands and thousands and thousands of hits. But there wasn't that same kind of corresponding work on parent knowledge. And so that's where I've done research for a few years. What is parent knowledge? And so I'll talk a little bit about that as I go along. But these are things then that all of a sudden become possible when we walk alongside families. These are things that we begin to access. So funds of knowledge, and I'm sure many of you know this work well, as I said, but our funds of knowledge are all the knowledge we hold from being alive in the world, the history that we've lived, the present we're living, the future that we anticipate. It's shaped by where we're born, what we do, who our family is, what our culture is, what our religion is, if we practice one. All of those things give us those funds of knowledge that enable us to be alive and successful in the world. And then the home culture piece that Yesenia talked about, right? That unique and particular way of being and doing in a family, separate from any other. This is my brother-in-law, Ian. He comes from England. And so my sister, Melanie, one of their Christmas traditions became this wearing of this, you know, popping those Christmas crackers and putting on your little Christmas hat and looking for the prize that came inside. We had never done that as a family before. That's home culture now that exists in Melanie's family. That doesn't exist in mine, doesn't exist in my sister Brenda's, but makes her family unique from ours, even though we all come from that same place. So no matter what family we come to know, there will be particularities, there will be uniquenesses, there will be things for us to know that we couldn't possibly know unless we spent time with them. Parent knowledge then, as I said, also particular and unique. So it's the kind of knowledge that develops in relationship, in that complex act of raising children in the complex place of a home, right? And so parent knowledge arises out of that experience. This is a friend of mine, Vernon. He's holding his little brand new granddaughter in this picture. And I think about what would Vernon know about that little girl that none of the rest of us in this room today could possibly know? What soothes her? What stories has she been read? What language does she speak? What are the kinds of things that make her happy, make her cry? What foods might she love or be allergic to? All of these kinds of things Vernon knows that no one else knows, right? So how does that begin to inform what we do with children when they're with us in a classroom, how we welcome them, how we make space for them, how we make their experience at school joyful in the kind of way that Dr. Boone talked about. I have a story of a teacher, Janique, a pre-kindergarten teacher teaching 3- and 4-year-olds, and she had a little girl who had some special characteristics and qualities. She was considered on the autism spectrum. And so Janique started by going and visiting the family, meeting the mom and saying, tell me about your daughter, right? What are the things that I should know? And the mom said, you know, sometimes she just gets overstimulated, overwhelmed, and she has a meltdown. And so Janique said, what do you do? What do you do when that happens? And the mom said, I know this seems kind of silly, but you know what works for us is I just sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And so, of course, school happens, days unfold, and one day the little girl is overwhelmed and starts to break down and to cry. And Janique remembers what the mama said, and so she starts to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, and the little girl gets calm right away. That's just a small example, but it shows you the power of parent knowledge. What might Janique have done? How long might it have taken her to figure out what to do without that parent knowledge? The other thing that's happening, because kids are with their families 80% of the time, right, in out of school times and places, there's a lot of teaching and learning going on, right, using their funds of knowledge based on their home culture, using their parent knowledge. And so again, how do we access all of this learning if we don't know what's happening? How do we find out from our families, what are you doing in those out of school times and places? I've included a picture of Vernon again. Allie's older now. They're Indigenous, they're First Nations, Plains Cree, and they participate in ceremony. And what Vernon's doing here is he's teaching Allie about sage. So sage is one of the sacred plants, and it's burned in smudges, it's burned in sweat lodge ceremonies and so on. And he's doing all of this teaching. So imagine when Allie comes to school, the kind of knowledge she'll have, the things she knows, the things that she could bring into the classroom, the things her parents and her grandparents could bring as well. So being family-centric, why do we want to do it? Why is this shift so important? It does bring the joy that Dr. Boone talked about. Look at the faces of these people. This is a community walk. And the staff are engaging with community in the community, learning about the riches that exist there, learning about strengths that exist, assets in the community, resources that are available to parents and families. It shares power. I'm with a vice principal of a school. We're at a home visit with a Syrian family. They own the agenda here. It's their space. We are their guests. So the power is theirs in that moment, that opportunity to engage with them in those meaningful and authentic ways. And the last one is a community canvassing, going door to door, just knocking on doors in the community and asking parents for feedback. It could be specific to things. We started by saying, what are the things you'd love to see the school do for your children? What would you love them to do for you? What would you love them to do for your family? And we started to build a plan out of their voice. We asked them, and then we moved forward from there. So what I want to do then, if we're wanting to be family-centric, we're trying to shift our stance and move in that direction, what could that look like? What are some examples? So I want to give you a few examples at the classroom level. These are just a few out of many, many, many. And I want to give you a few at the school level as well. Depending on what's interesting to you, we can spend more time at office hour next week to digging into them a little bit more. Those of us who work in schools have formal positions. We have titles, we have places to be, a classroom, an office, etc. And so when we're the people that are positioned on that ground, then I believe it's our responsibility to extend invitations to the children, to their families, to their parents to come and join us in that learning. That joining can be just through communication. We know lots of families are at work, they aren't able to be on the landscape. They don't have to be. If they're engaged at home and we're communicating with them about that learning and things that they're doing there, that's all we need. But that extending of invitations is one of the first things that we can do. We invite, we invite, we invite. We invite multiple times, we invite in multiple ways. So this is Paul in the top corner. He was a high school teacher. He's actually now in central services. He's been promoted. And what Paul did as a high school teacher is he often would send a photo of his own family, a series of photos of his own family home. He'd write a letter, he'd introduce himself. Here's who I am, let me tell you about my family. This is what we do when I'm not in school. These are things we love and value. These are things we do. And he invited families, he invited parents to write back to him and say, tell us, would you please take a minute and tell me about your family? What are things you want me to know about your child? What are things that you want me to know about your family? What are your hopes and dreams for your child? And these are high school kids that we're talking about here. I say child, but obviously they're young adults, right? But he did this very personal, very relaxed, very warm, side by side, family-centric, family to family invitation. And he said, it doesn't matter how many you get back. In high school, people often say, I don't have time to meet families, but you write one email, right, for each of the classes that you're teaching, and you get those responses back. How much knowledge do you have right away that you would never have otherwise? So simple, efficient, and yet rich, rich, rich in what it brings to the table. Jesse, in this family photo in the middle, Jesse was also a high school teacher. He taught high school phys ed and social studies, history. Those were his main courses. And so what Jesse did with every class he taught each semester is he sent a daily email to each group. So he said in a full semester, when he had a full load, he'd be teaching 5 classes. When he had a lighter load, it might only be 3 or 4. And he said he could write a daily email to each of his classes in about 5 minutes. So he said, even if I have a full load, it's under half an hour of my time. And he saw the investment as being really valuable. So Jesse kind of got a little pattern in how he did his daily emails. So he would name a concept they had discussed in the course that day, something interesting that came up, and then something that maybe the parents could chat with their young adult, their student, their child with in a home context. So an example, we have a statement here in our curriculum because we sign treaties with our First Nations people. We have a statement that says we are all treaty people. And so that was the concept that Jesse was exploring with his high school social studies students that day. And he said in his email, this is the concept. And it was really interesting because some of the kids saw themselves as treaty people and some of them didn't. And we had quite a discussion. Be interesting for you to talk with your son or daughter tonight. Do they see themselves as a treaty person? And why or why not? And so that's an example. So he could write this quick email every day and start promoting conversation. And he said initially didn't get a lot back, but he said as he continued to do it, more and more parents responded. They would share things that came up in conversation. Things would start to happen. Hey, when he was doing World War history, one of the parents contacted and said, you know, I still have the kit my grandfather had in the ward. Would you like me to bring it in? Do you want to look at it with the kids? Those kinds of things started to happen, right? Home learning, funds of knowledge coming into the classroom, and all of a sudden, right, they're teaching together. In the far corner, this is family scrapbooking or family photo stories. So what the teacher does there is have the families come in, invites them to bring photos, artifacts, whatever they choose, and to make a family storybook. This is pre-kindergarten. You see Anandita, she's just little there. And think of the richness. So then the teacher sits with each family, tell me about your family. And she sees all of the things that we've been talking about. The home culture, the funds of knowledge, the parents' knowledge of their child, the way they spend time when they're not in school. Think now when she does her curriculum making, how much knowledge she has to begin to build that curriculum in culturally responsive, respectful, honoring kinds of ways. Kathy does something similar to Paul. She was teaching younger children and she made up a personalized postcard. Her belief was, how do we ask families to share their stories of who they are if we don't share our own? So she told the kids lots of things about herself, and then too, like Paul did, invited a response back. So just a few different examples of ways we're bringing lives and learning, we're bringing the riches into our classrooms. This is a really beautiful one. That we have a book here on the prairies written by a Métis writer, David Willett, If You're Not from the Prairie. And it says things like, if you're not from the prairie, you don't know the wind. You can't know the wind. Our cold winds of winter cut right to the core. Hot summer wind devils blow down your door. And it goes on like that. So what's happened here is that the family's been invited to a potluck. Everyone's brought something to share. Again, we're setting the table together. I know that isn't always possible in all communities. It worked in this community. The teacher shared the story, if you're not from the prairie, and then to make it easy, families had pages, right? If you're not a Nicholson, you don't know Tenting in Cypress. You can't know Waffle Wednesday. If you're not a Nicholson, you don't know Cheering on the Blue Jays. And this one's from a family who's originally from the Philippines. So think again of the kind of knowledge that now is available to the teacher for their curriculum planning. What possibilities might that teacher see, again, for bringing families into the teaching and learning on the school landscape? So it's so typical in schools to have a meet the teacher night. That's school-centric. It's about us. I need you to know who I am. I need you to know what curriculum I'm teaching. As you can see, there's lots of other ways to share that. So how do we then, instead of having a meet the teacher night, have a meet the family night? How do we begin to create occasions where our families come and they have something specific to do and to share with us? This is one I really love. This is a photo from a summer graduate class that I was teaching, and this is the male at the table is Brett Rowland, high school English department head, high school English teacher. And he was like, okay, Deb, this is cool. This is all great, but I can see how all these early childhood teachers can do this, but I don't know how I can engage parents at the high school level. And so the group challenged him, I challenged him, we did a lot of work, and he's an amazing, amazing educator. And so what he decided he was going to try in his high school English classes was to do parent-student book clubs. So he said, kids read novels anyway. What if I make it about parents and family members reading those novels together? So he offered it as an invitation, not an obligation. He said, those of you who want to can read your novel, do your novel study together with your parents. So he presented 5 novel choices to the students and to their families. And they could choose the one they wanted to do. Students could still in the class do their independent activities if they wanted, or they could do their novel with their family instead. And initially, there was a few that took it up right away, and over time it's grown and grown. So what Brett does is he calls them check-ins. And so in the community that he works in, there's quite a lot of technology. People have laptops and computers and so on. So most of their check-ins are done that way. So his first check-in with his novel study, with his parent-student book club will be, tell me what novel you chose, tell me why you chose it, tell me how you're planning as a parent and student to read this novel together. And then, show me your schedule. So that was check-in 1. Another one later was, I want you independently each, parent and child, and that parent could have been a sibling, it could have been an auntie, an uncle, didn't matter. Each independently pick a passage from the novel that you think reflects your family values. And then pick one that you think challenges your family values, and then sit down together and discuss it. And when they sat down together to discuss it, they would record it, video, audio, whatever they chose, so that Brett could see the kind of interactions they were having. Another one, he said to them, pick a theme, a motif, a concept from the story, and together as a family create something that demonstrates your processing, your understanding of that theme. So they could sing a song, write a story, write a poem, create a dance, like whatever they wanted. And there was a really beautiful one I saw where the son was playing the piano, the dad was playing a cultural drum, and the mom was singing. And they picked this song that they thought really depicted what was happening in Brave New World. Just such a beautiful memory and a moment for them to have. So what I want to do is just share with you one check-in. This is an example of check-in 1 to just give you a feel for what was happening in homes with parents and kids.
This is my mother, Caroline Lindo. She reads journal articles and opinion-based articles online. She also reads textbooks for her job. She used to be an avid reader, but not as much anymore because she doesn't have as much time as she used to.
Okay, and this is my son, Jermaine. I am excited to study this novel with him. I haven't been getting a lot of opportunities to do a lot of reading these days, so I'm happy that I get a chance to read. Now, Jermaine does some reading, maybe not novel study, but he does read online articles, specifically sports articles. And he being a guy, I suppose, it's hard to have him sit down and do a lot of reading. So I'm happy for that as well, that this gives us a chance to really spend some time to do actual reading, to study a novel. So this is a great opportunity. We have chosen this novel. For me, I find that it's interesting because it's about the slave trade and being a black person and having slavery being a part of my history. I think it is something that I would enjoy exploring, to know about how other persons experienced slavery. All right? And I think Jermaine chose this as well for some other reason. He'll share.
I personally chose this book because I like the idea of every chapter being a new experience with a different character, and with each chapter more and more time progresses, so the book is not one specific time in history, it spans over hundreds of years, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, when I read the summary and I saw it had multiple perspectives, I found that interesting too. Just reading one book and having so many different perspectives in just this one novel is something that I really want to explore. Right. So we have come up with a calendar, and Jermaine can share with us how we have worked together to determine how we are going to complete the reading of this novel.
So we plan on pretty much reading one chapter every day, with some days off. After every day, we're gonna talk about what we read in each chapter to keep us accountable, to make sure that we do not miss any days.
Yeah, so at the end of reading every section, we are going to have a check-in with each other to make sure that we are doing our reading and to make sure that we're at the same point. And so we are going to be discussing what the experiences that we have had reading from that particular section. Yeah, so look forward to. Yeah. Nice.
So Brett, of course, debriefed these experiences with students. He heard from them what they liked about it, what they'd like done differently, and so on. And he sent an email to all the parents as well and said, tell me what your experience was like. And he gathered all of those responses. And then I had an opportunity later to go out to the school in an evening and meet with kids and families who were part of this experience and to talk with them. And it was just heartwarming. One father said, it was a father and a daughter who had done the book together. And he had said, my daughter's smart. She gets great marks in school. I know that. But he said, I've never seen her strategies before. I've never been able up close through her schoolwork to see how she thinks about things, how she comes to decisions, what are the factors that she weighs. And he said, I just got this up close and personal look at her thinking processes. And he said it was just amazing. It was a student, and he said, we come from a really religious family. My parents are really strict about a lot of things, different than maybe some of my friends in my classroom. And he said, I've pushed back against some of it. I haven't always understood. And they had done Brave New World, and they had done that, talking about what are things that reflect your values and what are things that do not. And he said at the end of the book club together, he understood why his parents valued the things they did. He understood why they were asking them to live it in a certain way. And he said, I'm not so resistant anymore. It makes sense to me. I have a better picture of where my parents are wanting us to go. Just beautiful moments like that. There was one mom who did the book club with her son. And then later, it just was coincidence. I was talking about the book clubs in a course, and Michelle said to me, Deb, I was one of those parents. I did that with Brett. And in the course that I was teaching on parent engagement, we were reading novels as one activity, applying what we were learning to a fictional case study, if you will. And her son had come to her and he said, hey, Mom, you read my book with me. Do you want me to read your book for university with you? And so he just initiated this novel club. So it was really, really exciting to see the possibilities. What Brett loved about it was no more work. He was going to do a novel study anyway. He was going to choose those novels and give choices to kids. He just included the families in it. So that's really beautiful, and I think we can learn a lot from that. I went to another school, very, very different demographic. Different city, different economic status. This was an inner city school with many First Nations and Métis children, and challenges that they face, with the residential school history. And I shared this idea of the book clubs with the staff there and said, would it work here? What do you think? And immediately the teachers grabbed onto it and said, yep, we'll just change it. We'll do it differently. So one English teacher, her book choices included a graphic novel included a youth novel, so a little bit lower reading level, and her other choices included books that had audio versions so that parents who were non-readers or had lower literacy levels could still engage with their child with the book. And then rather than doing online check-ins, they started doing like dioramas and posters and things that they could do with materials the school provided for them. So she found it worked as well. She just did it, as I said, in a contextually different way. One of the foods teachers took it, and after teaching the kids some knife skills and different things, they planned a menu, and then their parents joined them at school together. They cooked it, and the kids demonstrated what they had learned and knew about knife skills and balanced meals and things like that, and they all ate together. So she picked up the idea and made it work for her in a different content area. All of this, to me, beautiful examples of being family-centric, of bringing the families into the learning, of honoring the richness they have to offer our students as well. So then these are things that we've done more at a school level. They could still be done at a classroom level, just like the classroom ones could be school level too, but just sort of zeroing in on some ideas when you're thinking as a whole staff. Barbara, Dr. Boone had the opportunity to experience this when she was with us in Saskatoon. And this was prompted, I was in the foyer of a school, I was doing research there. There was a grandfather approached me. He brought his little granddaughter to school every day. He happened to be majority Canadian, a white man. And we had coffee in the foyer every morning and tea. And so there was often groups of parents there. And he said, lots of these families, they don't talk to me. And he said, I don't know why. Like, do they speak English? Is it because I'm a man? Is it because I'm white? Is it because their culture is different than mine? But he had made this observation that in the foyer, there were Syrian or Muslim families perhaps gathered, but basically Syrian were in a cluster, Bangladeshi were in a cluster, etc. And he said, we're not breaking our boundaries, we're not breaking our barriers, and they don't know what to do. And I had seen this beautiful experience at it was called Emmaus College. It was a high school in Rockhampton in Queensland, Australia. And they were doing it to bring diverse kids together. And they were just using food as a vehicle for storytelling. And food brings us to tables, as Dr. Boone said. And so I grabbed that idea. We worked with it as a staff with some parent input, and we came up with something. We call it Cooking for Cohesion. And what we did, the first families that we invited to do it, we did it at the school on a Sunday. We gave them money to buy groceries, and they planned their menu, and they cooked in the kitchen at the school. Everyone in the school was invited to come. We set blankets and tablecloths on the floor in the gym, and the families served their food. And while people were eating, they told them who they were, where they had come from, how they arrived in Canada, what some of their stories are. You see Bassam with the beads, one of the fathers. And he was saying, he showed a picture on a slide, and it was just a pile of rubble. And he said, this is our home in Syria. Like, imagine how people responded to that. They introduced family members. There was about 3 families hosting that one. At the end of that experience, Bassam on the mic said to this gym full of people sitting who'd had their lunch from all aspects of the community. And he said, we've shared a meal together. You are now my family. And there was a woman there, majority Canadian, white woman, had been in that community for a long, long time. And she was crying. She had tears running down her face. And she came up to me after and she said, Debbie, I take that seriously. I will be his family now because I know his story. And so it's about cohesion, connecting people, bringing people together, bringing staff with families, bringing families together with one another. So there's that web of relationships. And these particular photos were in Bassam and Fadia's home. These are directors of education. So that's our most senior person in a school division, what I think you would call a school district. in a summer leadership institute. So we have directors of ed. Bassam is teaching them to dance because men dance with men. And you can see how absolutely filled with joy that whole experience is, and how powerful Bassam feels in his role as a parent in that community. I'm watching my time. I know I just have a few more minutes. These are examples of parent forums, of lunch and learns, which is another kind of version of a parent forum, if you will. So you see the mom in the left top corner. You'll see the question, what can we do as a school to support you and your family? And so the parent who leads the parent council, what we call here a school council, is inviting input from families. So rather than starting that year by deciding what we're going to do for them, starting that year by asking them what kinds of things can we do as staff and as school council to support you and your family. In the one at the bottom, again, sitting on the floor, because many people in this community ate on the floor rather than at a table. We made picnic baskets for small groups so they could gather in those groups. This particular one was about report cards, parent-teacher conferences, sharing student learning. And we were asking questions from them. How do you want us to know your family? How do you want us to share your child's learning with you? What are the things you want to hear about that are most important to you? So again, having that opportunity for voice, they're shifting policies, they're shifting practices, they're shaping them to be reflective of who they are. Again, those things coming into play on their parent knowledge, their funds of knowledge, and so on. The Lunch and Learn was being done by a high school where graduation rates are very, very low. And there's really a huge effort to engage students and to help them graduate. Parents were saying to school counselors and teachers, we don't even know how to read the transcripts. We don't know how many credits it takes to graduate from high school. We don't know what courses our kids are supposed to take. And so what they did on the lunch hour, because in that community, that's when it worked best, they brought kids together with their parents, and they did all those kinds of things. They would walk through a transcript. They showed them how to use the app on their phones, and they listened to parents. And so it was very responsive. What are the things that you need to know, want to know, and how do we support you in that so that you can support your children in their journey? So again, just a quick example of that, and we can talk more of these next week if you're interested. So I guess to close, what I want to say is who we are in this work matters. The stance we take, whether it's school-centric or family-centric, it makes a difference. We're the ones in the positions of power. We're the ones with authority. We're the ones who can start to shift things, so that becomes our job. Typically, or often what will happen is we'll look outward. Things aren't going well, people aren't coming, kids aren't attending, kids aren't achieving, whatever's happening, we look outward and we blame and shame. We look at our community and say, what are these parents doing? What aren't these parents doing? If only these parents would. If only these parents wouldn't. And we put the problem way out there away from us, and it's somebody else's problem and it's somebody else's fault. We don't mean to do that. I think it's a natural thing. It creates deficit thinking. It's a focus on barriers. So instead of that, how do we look inward? How do we look inward at ourselves and say, okay, what can I do? What is in my power? What's within my control to change? So, okay, these parents aren't mixing in the foyer. The grandpa said, let's take charge. Let's do something about it. How do we, 30% of our parents come to parent-teacher conferences. Instead of being critical of them, how do we say, well, what could we do differently to change that? What can I do? Let me own it. Did we plan this event with them, or did we plan it for them? Maybe that's something we can change. Did we give them choice? Were there multiple options? And so on. And we begin to explore our own practice and say, how family-centric was my approach? How can I make it more family-centric in the future? So to me, that's the place we have to go, looking inward, taking ownership, thinking about families as the center, asking, right? Using the riches, using their knowledge in order to do this work with them. I just want to read you a little bit of the end of this story so that you know how it ends, and I'll wrap that up. So the little girl in the story says, "The rest of them have gone outside to see the new sliver of moon, but I'm still here sitting at our nice homemade kitchen table with one cookie left on my mother's good blue flowered plate. And I'm writing this book about us. I kind of pat the table, and I'm glad it's ours. In fact, I think the title of my book is going to be The Table Where Rich People Sit. And I think what we're able to do at every table, we're able to make sure rich people sit there. We're going to make sure that it's representative of all the parents and families within our community. We can make sure that they have place, that they have voice, that they have power over things that affect them and their children. We can ensure there's a plate with cookies sitting at the center and that there's joy in that engagement. When we shift from school-centric to family-centric thinking, we have the opportunity to do that. So thank you so much for your time with me today. I'm just so appreciative of it. Again, contact information, my socials, if you're interested in following me on any of those pieces. So thank you so much.
Oh, Debbie, thank you for the message that you shared, the challenge that you shared with us. I just so enjoy the power and the ways that you are truly challenging how we think, how we act, what we do, and yet do it in such a way that I truly believe we can do it. We are so encouraged by you. So thank you for that. And I want to just encourage all of you as well to just join me in the chat, thanking Dr. Pushor for her presentation with us this morning. And I hope that many of you who would like to have a deeper discussion with Dr. Pushor, there were so many wonderful questions in the chat, that you will join us next week. We have an hour that she's going to give us next week without an agenda except to talk with you about your questions. That time will be on Tuesday, September 26th from 10 to 11, and that link to register is available on the webpage for today's summit. So thank you for that, and I just am so excited for us in Ohio and all of our participants here from wherever you are joining us from to really consider this, making the shift from being school-centric to family-centric, to walking alongside families, learning alongside families, sitting alongside families. It's powerful. So now is the time for us to exit this main gathering room. You have a break, and then to join one of the first 9 sessions that are beginning at 10:30, and here's how it's going to work. Many of you have already registered for the sessions you're attending today. To join that session, just use the link that was emailed to you. If you have not already registered or you can't locate that confirmation, that's okay. Head to the website, select your choice from the summit webpage, and you'll have to register very quickly, and then you'll be able to join the session. So remember, all of the sessions will be recorded as well. So if you're having a hard time deciding, pick one and you'll be able to watch the recording of the other. We invite you to join the conversation today on Twitter using hashtag OHSummit23. And then each year we learn a lot from your feedback. So please complete the survey provided by the session moderator at the end of the last session you attend. So if you're interested in receiving contact hours, be sure to complete that evaluation survey at the end of the last session you're going to attend. The moderators in every session will distribute the link. So please take the survey, especially if you need those contact hours. We really hope that you enjoy this day. Thank you for being here.